celebrities lived in a special cocoon that the LAPD respected. That's also a part of this story. I actually became a and used to travel around and read books, so I think it's a big part.
Would you live there?
I don't think so, but I really did enjoy it.
Yeah. One of the ironies that you constantly refer to in the book is all these complaints that O.J. was unfairly treated, that he was handcuffed at one point, when in reality you point to chapter and verse in which his celebrity status seemed to give him special favor.
See, this is why one of many reasons why this case dwarfs fiction. I mean, here you couldn't write this, that a guy gets acquitted because basically because the jury thinks the cops are out to get him and got him, when if you look at the facts you see how easy they went on him. I mean, the best example of this is the famous interview that the cops did with him on the Monday after he returned from Chicago. Here are the cops, the golden opportunity. These cops who were supposedly framing O.J. Simpson, sprinkling blood all around, they only interview him for 33 minutes. And they ask him, hardly any tough questions. My favorite question and answer from that interview, they ask O.J., well, when did you get back from the dance recital? Bring the Bronco back. And he says, well, 7, 8, 9, right in there. and it's totally useless as an interview.
Yeah. And Furman?
Well, Furman is a, he was the perfect bogeyman. I mean, criminal lawyers in Los Angeles used to say to me, this O.J. Simpson, he's used up the luck for every criminal defendant in the history, of this city. Because, imagine the luck of having this guy with this terrible history, appear in the middle of this case. Now, as I say, and he was the 16th police officer on the scene. I don't believe he had the opportunity, the motive to plant any evidence. I don't think he did plant any evidence. But the LAPD, in its arrogance of letting this man on the stand, letting this man stay on the force, created the problem.
The perfect foil. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll talk with Jeff Toobin about the race card and how it was played and perhaps misused.
Detective Furman, can you tell us how you feel about testifying today?
Nervous? Reluctant?
Can you tell us why?
Throughout, since June 13th, it seems that I've seen a lot of the evidence ignored and a lot of personal issues come to the forefront. I think that's too bad.
Is he a racist? Yes. Is he the worst LAPD has to offer? Yes. Do we wish that this person was never hired by LAPD? Yes. Should LAPD have ever hired him? No. Should such a person be a police officer? No. In fact, do we wish there were no such person on the planet? Yes.
Who then polices the police? You police the police. You police them by your verdict. You're the ones who send the message. Nobody else is going to do it in this society. They don't have the courage. Nobody has the courage. You have a bunch of people running around with no courage to do what is right. Except individual citizens. You're the ones in war. You're the ones who are on the front line. These people set policies. These people talk all this stuff. You implement it. You're the people. You're what makes America so great. Don't you forget it.
We're talking to Jeff Toobin, the author of The Run of His Life, The People versus O.J. Simpson, an amazingly readable account of this incredible soap opera. Now, Jeff, you played a major role in a piece in The New Yorker early on revealing, because Shapiro revealed it to you, the intention to play the race card.
Correct.
And a lot of people think race was the be-all and end-all of this case. You agree with that?
I wish I didn't, but fundamentally I do. I can dance around it and I can say, well, there were lots of other issues, and there were. But I do believe race was the transcendent issue in this case. I believe it's the only reason fundamentally we're still talking about this case now, and it's the only reason we'll care about the Simpson case 10 or 20 years from now.
Do you think Shapiro used you? You know, after your piece came out, you report this. He said, I've won the case.
Absolutely. you know, obviously my business is interviewing people in controversial cases, and I would say of the people I interview, approximately 100% have some agenda with me. And that was certainly true of Robert Shapiro. Now, my view is, if someone has an agenda with you, that doesn't mean you don't interview them, doesn't mean you don't report what they have to say. It means you report it in context and with the appropriate notifications to the reader about what this person's agenda is. And if you look back to my story in the New Yorker, it's all there. I mean, the fact that this might be a desperation move. I mean, the fact that it, you know, that when the facts are against you, you try to change the subject to the behavior of the police. So yes, he had an agenda with me, and I had an agenda with him. I mean, I wanted to break a story, and I did.
Now, when you broke that story, did you believe they would pull it off the way they did?
I knew they were going to use it. I mean, one of the things that I remember, you know, in the sort of storm after my story came out is, oh, they'll never do it, they'll never do it. I knew they would do it. I mean, again, this is why the Los Angeles locale is so important. I mean, you know, this is only 2 years since the Rodney King riots when this case happened. I mean, this is a racially raw city in a way that, I mean, you know, I live and grew up in New York City in a way that New York, for all its problems, I don't believe is. So I knew that this was going to be a central element of their case. And
in the book, you suggest that the media in general, and you're part of the media in this regard, softballed O.J. in part because they didn't want to appear racist. They didn't want to appear as if they were contributing to these feelings.
This goes back to what we were talking about O.J. Simpson's character, the notion of him as a role model that was reported often. You know, I believe that, you know, for lack of a better term, political correctness did play a role in how this case was reported. I mean, when Johnny Cochran, you know, gets up and says that, you know, Chris Darden is a racist because he suggested that someone could sound black, and you know, we report that deadpan. That's not our job, I don't think. I think we were paralyzed, I mean, much of us, and I include myself in part, that by fear of being called racist, because that's such a term of opprobrium that we're all so afraid of, that I think we pulled our punches and it was wrong.
I get the sense that you're sort of angry at the verdict.
You know, I don't. I mean, you know, one of the things talking about my book as I have, I mean, I run into a lot of people who are really angry. You think I'm angry? I mean, I make no bones about the fact that I think this verdict was wrong. But, you know, I do approach this case as a journalist. And
not as an ex-prosecutor?
You know, no, I don't think so. I mean, I have a great affection for both defense attorneys, you know, that I know, and the function in general, and I have no qualms about that at all. And, you know, fundamentally, I do react to this case as a man who got away with murder, and you can't, you know, have a completely unemotional reaction to that. But I feel like I have plenty of distance from it and can analyze it pretty objectively.
What do you say to those people who say, look, race, yeah, it's an element, but it wasn't the determinant element, because you're never going to get a conviction when you have no eyewitness, no confession, and no weapon. That in and of itself creates reasonable doubt.
Don't buy it at all. I mean, you know, you have to look at the, I mean, you're using what was sort of the classic defense lawyer trick, which, you know, is a good trick, which is, you know, talk about the evidence that isn't there as opposed to the evidence that is there. This was one of the most overwhelming circumstantial cases I've certainly ever seen. And to me, there is absolutely no explanation of this evidence except that Simpson is guilty. But, I mean, the defense did a classic job of defending a circumstantial evidence case.
So listen to what, in effect, one comes away with from the book. If we determine guilt or innocence based on the racial composition of the jury, we're in deep trouble.
You bet.
How do we get out of this box?
Well, I mean, I think there are a couple things. I mean, there's sort of big things and there's small things. One of the I mean, the big things is, you know, solve race relations in the United States, which is, you know, far beyond my purview. But for example,
and not in the short term.
Not in the short term. But I'll tell you one thing that really is sort of a hobby horse of mine for a long time that is illustrated by this case. We need to abolish peremptory challenges, period. Just get rid of them altogether, because the whole notion of lawyers being allowed to exclude people for no stated reason is an invitation to pernicious racial discrimination. My attitude is you throw the first 12 people in the box, they're your jury, unless you can prove that they have specific biases that disqualify them. These peremptory challenges and the jury consulting industry that they spawn do nothing for justice, and I think we ought to get rid of them all.
But do you think just doing that solves this
Oh, no.
deep problem?
Absolutely not. I mean, no, I think, you know, every time a cop stops someone for the crime that's ruefully referred to in Los Angeles as DWB, driving while black, you know, that is the next O.J. Simpson juror in the making. So, I mean, you know, police abuse is a real thing. I mean, it's not like these jurors were fantasizing. That doesn't excuse them in my book. I don't think they were you know, that they were right, but, you know, the conditions were there.
That's right. That's part of their life's experience. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll talk with Jeff about the civil case and how much from the criminal case will bear on the civil case.